Some moments don't just break you, they rewrite you. They take everything you believed about family, about love, about the people who were supposed to be your safe place, and they turn it all to dust. And the worst part, you never see it coming. Not from the people who raised you, not from the ones who held your hand on your first day of school and kissed your forehead when the world was scary. You never expect the wound to come from them. My name is Natalie, and just 8 months ago, I was lying in a hospital, bed tubes in my arm, machines beeping, my whole body screaming in pain, and all I could think about was my baby girl. Her name is Rosie. She was only 6 days old when the accident happened. 6 days, she hadn't even had her first proper bath yet. I hadn't memorised every crease of her tiny fingers yet. We were just beginning, she and I, just finding our rhythm, that quiet, sacred rhythm that new mothers and newborns build together in those first fragile days. And then everything stopped. I was driving to the pharmacy, just a quick errand, nothing dramatic, nothing dangerous. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of ordinary Tuesday that has no right to become the worst day of your life. A car ran a red light. I didn't even have time to react. The impact came from the left side. My door crumpled like paper, and the last thing I remember before everything went dark was thinking Rosie needs me. Please, not today. I woke up 3 days later. Fractured ribs, a broken collarbone, a serious concussion. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive. Lucky, that word felt cruel in the moment. Because when I opened my eyes and asked for my baby, the first word that left my cracked lips was her name. The nurse smiled softly and told me she was safe, being cared for by family. Family, I exhaled. I let myself feel relief. My parents had her. Of course they did. My mother, the woman who had spent 9 months rubbing my back, setting up the nursery, crying happy tears at my baby shower she had Rosie. Everything was going to be okay. But what I didn't know that day was that okay was already unravelling. It was my nurse, Clara, who first noticed something was off. She was a quiet woman, kind eyes, the type who notices everything but says little. On my second day of consciousness, she came in during the evening shift and sat beside me with that careful expression nurses wear when they're about to deliver something delicate. "Your baby," she said gently. "She's not here at the hospital, honey. We were told your parents couldn't take her." There was a situation. I stared at her. "What do you mean couldn't take her?" Clara hesitated. "I probably shouldn't say more, but I think you should make some calls when you feel strong enough." I didn't wait to feel strong enough. With a broken collarbone and 3 cracked ribs, I reached for my phone. My mother picked up on the second ring. Her voice was bright, too bright, the kind of brightness that hides something uncomfortable underneath. "Natalie. Oh, sweetheart, we've been so worried, Mum. Where is Rosie?" A pause that lasted just 1 second too long. Well, we tried, honey. We really did. But you know your father's back has been terrible, and I've been dealing with my sinuses, and a newborn is just so demanding, and we thought it wasn't fair to the baby to have us struggling like that, so we made arrangements. I couldn't breathe. And not because of the broken ribs. What arrangements, Mum? Another pause. We called your Aunt Sandra. She said she'd take her temporarily, just until you're back on your feet. Aunt Sandra, a woman I had spoken to maybe 4 times in the last decade. A woman Rosie had never met. A stranger in every meaningful sense of the word. My 6-day-old daughter was with a near stranger because her grandparents found a newborn too inconvenient. I hung up the phone, and for the first time since waking up, I cried. Not from the pain in my body, from something so much deeper than that. The next 48 hours were the longest of my life. I called Aunt Sandra. She was kind enough awkward, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, but trying. She told me Rosie was eating, sleeping, and that she'd hired a night nurse to help because, in her words, I wasn't exactly prepared for this. Of course she wasn't. Nobody had asked her to be. That's what destroyed me most. Not just that my parents had handed my daughter off, but the ease of it. The casual way my mother had said we made arrangements like she was rescheduling a dinner reservation. Like my baby was an inconvenience to be managed. Like 6 days of life meant nothing in the face of a bad back and sinus trouble. I called my mother again that evening. I asked her directly calmly, even though every word felt like swallowing glass, Mum, did it even cross your mind to just try? For Rosie? For me? And her answer told me everything. Natalie, you need to understand that we're not young anymore. We raised you. We've done our part. It's not fair to expect us to start over just because you had a baby. Done our part. Like love has an expiration date. Like family comes with a contract that expires at some point convenient for them. I put the phone down and I made myself a promise right there in that hospital bed, with machines beeping and my body barely holding itself together. I promised myself that I would never again shape my expectations around people who had shown me, clearly and without apology, exactly who they were. But then something happened that I hadn't expected. My phone rang. The name on the screen made my breath catch. Grandpa Joe, my father's father, a man of few words and steady hands who smelled like cedar wood and always had a peppermint in his shirt pocket. He was 74, widowed, living alone in a small house 40 minutes from the hospital. He didn't call often, but when he did, it always meant something. Natalie, his voice was low and serious. I just heard what happened. All of it. I couldn't speak. I'm coming tomorrow morning, he said. I'm bringing Rosie home. 3 words, I'm bringing Rosie. I sobbed so hard the nurse came to check on me. He arrived the next morning exactly when he said he would, because Grandpa Joe had never been late a day in his life. He walked through the hospital room door, holding my daughter, my Rosie, wrapped in her yellow blanket, her tiny face scrunched and perfect. He placed her in my one good arm, the one without the IV, and he sat down in the chair beside me, and he didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he said, quietly, your parents made their choice. Now you make yours. I looked at him, this 74-year-old man, who had driven 40 minutes, picked up a baby he barely knew, and shown up without being asked, and I understood something profound. Family isn't always the people who made you. Sometimes it's the person who shows up when everyone else steps back. Over the next 2 weeks, Grandpa Joe became everything. He slept on a cot in the corner of my hospital room for 3 nights. The nurses bent the rules because nobody had the heart to ask him to leave. He learned how to warm bottles. He learned which way Rosie liked to be held to stop crying. He sang her old songs in a low, gravelly voice, songs I hadn't heard since I was small, and she would go still in his arms like she recognized something ancient and safe in him. And me? I watched them together, and I grieved and healed at the same time. I grieved the parents I had needed and didn't have, and I healed because of the grandfather who showed me that love, real love, doesn't calculate the cost before it shows up. 3 weeks later, I came home, not to my parents' house, not to any version of the life I had imagined before the accident. I came home to my apartment, Rosie in my arms, Grandpa Joe carrying my bags, and I started over. My parents called twice in that first week. Both times, the conversations were brief and hollow, full of that particular kind of defensiveness people perform when they know they've done something wrong but refuse to name it. My mother mentioned her sinuses again. My father talked around the subject entirely. I listened. I responded politely. And then I made a decision. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, not in the dramatic sense, but out of something quieter and more final, clarity. I told them, simply and without cruelty, that Rosie and I were building our life now, that I loved them, that I forgave them not for their sake, but for mine, because carrying bitterness is a weight I refuse to give my daughter. But I also told them that trust, once broken that completely, doesn't rebuild itself on words. It rebuilds on time, on action, on showing up. They were not ready to hear that. My mother cried. My father said I was being dramatic. And I let them feel whatever they needed to feel, because none of it changed what I knew. The real shift, the moment that felt like justice without cruelty, came about 6 weeks after I came home. My parents had planned a large family gathering, a birthday celebration for my aunt. They expected me to come, to bring Rosie, to slot back into the family picture as if nothing had happened. My mother had even sent a message saying, "Everyone is so excited to finally meet the baby." Finally, as if Rosie had been inaccessible. As if they hadn't been the ones who handed her to a near stranger the moment things became inconvenient. I didn't go. I took Rosie to Grandpa Joe's house instead. We sat on his back porch in the afternoon sun, Rosie asleep on his chest, and he told me stories about my father as a boy, stories I had never heard, stories that made me laugh and ache at the same time. He made us soup. He showed Rosie the garden he'd kept for 40 years, the same garden my grandmother had planted. And when I told him what I had decided, that I was stepping back from my parents, not forever, but until things were different, he nodded slowly and said something I will never forget. The ones who love you right will never make you explain why you needed them. I wrote that down that night. I have it on a card on my kitchen window where I see it every morning. Grandpa Joe is 74 years old, and he is Rosie's favourite person on earth. She lights up when she hears his voice. She reaches for him with both hands. And he, this man who nobody asked, who stepped in when everyone else stepped back, he has become the beating heart of what I now call my family. My parents and I are in a slow, careful process of rebuilding. It is not a fairy tale reconciliation. It is honest and uncomfortable and real. My mother has apologised genuinely, tearfully, in a way that felt like it cost her something. My father is still learning how to say the hard things. We are not where we were, but we are somewhere. What I learned from all of this, from the accident, the abandonment, the unexpected grace of an old man with peppermints in his pocket, is this: crisis doesn't create people's character, it reveals it. The people who show up when it's inconvenient, when it's hard, when there's nothing in it for them, those are the ones worth building your life around. And Rosie, my Rosie, who came into the world in chaos and was held by strangers and passed between uncertain hands in her very first days of life, she is surrounded now by a love so steady, so deliberate, so chosen, that I believe it will hold her for the rest of her life. That is not a small thing. That is everything.